There's been a lot of trade speculation this week, but will trade fantasies hit hard cap realities as the weeks wear on? Plus, has someone already locked up the Sixth Man of the Year race? That and our favorite things of the week all ahead today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. I was getting into the theme music there on a Friday. It's time to dance. We're almost at the weekend. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior NBA writer for the Action Network. We've got Matt Moore. And from the Locked On Bulls podcast, we've got Hayes. Welcome, gentlemen. This has been a week of early trade deadline talk. First, it was LeBron James, maybe some Warriors talk there, then Jimmy Butler, and now Ben Simmons. Odds makers put out a list of favorites to land Simmons in a trade or buyout scenario, and the Celtics topped that list. I got a forceful rebuke from Locked On Celtics host John Corrales, who said, quote, "The Celtics are a second apron team, so they can do neither of the two things that are being proposed. They cannot trade for Ben Simmons because they cannot aggregate players. They cannot take 3 or 4 players and say, here you go, Nets, and take Ben Simmons if they wanted to. They could not do that. They are not allowed to do it." That is as forceful as it gets. I pair that with some reporting from ESPN's Tim Bontemps, who wrote, "Several sources told ESPN in recent weeks they aren't sure any players making more than the low $20 million range will be traded this season." So I ask you this. We'll start with Matt. Are we trade speculating in a universe that doesn't even exist anymore, or will these apron teams find a way to get creative in the trade and buyout market?
I always think there's kind of like a way to figure out these things. It may be difficult. I think it's definitely going to suppress the market. And I do continue to wonder if the NBA is going to get together with the Board of Governors this summer and just go, we may have gone too far in our attempts to implement a hard cap. Like, yes, the savings are nice, but we also can't do anything. I do think that there probably will be deals because, I mean, look, most of the trades, most of these teams are looking for role players anyway. So, like, that's what you're looking to add. You're not looking for major components. Those deals will happen in the summer once teams are able to make more moves to get under the various apron lines. But, yeah, like, I don't know that how many major trades we're going to see, but do I think that we will see some major trades? Yeah, because I do think that there is enough interested parties and enough mechanisms to use to be able to find a way to figure these out, but just not the Celtics, because no, that's not happening.
Life always finds a way, to quote a
That's
great.
right.
It always finds a way. I go back to this quote made me go back to this summer, before the season started, when the New York Knicks increased the salary of 3 of the players included in the Karl Anthony Towns trade just $1, so that they're no longer vet minimum contracts, so they could aggregate them. So there's always, like, if the Knicks are finding that out this soon into the CBA, eventually teams will find a way to get it done and to figure it out. Now, are there going to be some big trades at this trade deadline? There's probably going to be 1 or 2. I refuse to believe that there's just no way that teams find a way to maneuver, but you do have to be a lot more creative and thoughtful in what you're going to do, not only now and in the future, and that's where the teams are going to find a way to start adjusting at. So I think it's always going to be a workaround. There's always wrinkles in every CBA that are exploits that are in there. It just may take teams another year or so to find it out, but it'll eventually happen.
And Doug, I think the other thing here is probably going to be, like, if you're a team that's looking to, let's say Jimmy Butler, right? And let's say that you're a certain amount over the apron that's going to prevent you from being able to do it. Not the Celtics, but in general. It's 2 mechanisms. You do 1 trade to get yourself under the apron. You do the second trade to get yourself Jimmy Butler. Like, that's the kind of mechanism that's going to have to happen. And it'll be complicated and it'll be a pain. Like, executives complain all the time about the CBA and how restrictive it is, but there are mechanisms. You just have to figure out the sequencing of order to get it done.
And see, that's where I land. I think there are going to be plenty of teams that are willing to get worse and absorb salary in order to facilitate some of these deals. And you mentioned that Knicks deal, Hayes. The Hornets were involved in that, and they used a room exception, which was the first time you could ever do that. They used that to help facilitate that deal. So all these guys are, all these front offices are always figuring out ways to get around some of these things. And I think this trade season will prove the same. All right, you mentioned Jimmy Butler there. Let's move on to more from that saga, which got more colorful last night in a Miami Heat win, their fourth straight. Jimmy Butler dyed portions of his hair orange. Was he messaging or master trolling? Either way, Locked On Suns was throwing cold water on the prospects of a deal in their latest episode.
When was the last time a team put together at the deadline or middle-ish of the NBA season that a team won a championship, right? Because that's the ultimate goal. If you add Butler to this team, and it's Butler, Booker, and KD, if they don't win the championship, it is a failure of a season, right? That is where most Suns fans' heads are at. You try to throw together a team at the deadline or near it, there is almost no shot you're winning the title.
And that was Benjamin Garcia there. And he was actually in that clip. He was actually advocating for them to make the deal sooner because you don't want to give, you want to give enough time to integrate Jimmy Butler into whatever stars you have left there in Phoenix. So, Hayes, what do you think about that angle there from Locked On Suns?
I mean, if you were able to go, if Jimmy Butler's able to be traded to the Suns, I'd be interested in seeing that team. As far as like Jimmy dyeing his hair, like, let's be clear here. Jimmy's one of the biggest trolls in the world. He's going to have fun with everything that he could possibly have fun with. He's a very petty person like myself. I embrace it. I love the pettiness from Jimmy Butler. But as far as the Suns getting a deal done sooner rather than later, I mean, why not? If you're looking at your roster now, why not go ahead and pull the trigger? But the biggest question in all this, like we keep talking about, is that I just don't think Jimmy's going to be traded. I don't think Jimmy's going to be traded. He should be, but I don't think he's going to be moved.
I think it's a good point by Locked On Suns that it's hard to just throw a guy in and then figure out the chemistry and everything else to make and win a title. That said, is it really a failure if the Suns make the Western Conference Finals? I don't think that's a failure. Like, that gets you further than you have been in some time since the title run, or finals run rather. So, like, I don't know that that's necessarily bad. And the other thing is, like, giving up Bradley Beal, and like, Brad's been good, but also, like, it's Bradley Beal. So, like, it's fine, I think, if you try and do that deal. If you can figure out how the mechanics work, I think it's an okay kind of idea, but I do think it's worth kind of considering for a lot of these teams, the disruption versus there's downsides to both. Hey, you're disrupting your team and you have to figure this out. Yeah, but you're not very good anyway. The Suns are, I think. I think the Suns are a championship caliber team. But some of these squads considering trades, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I don't think that should play a part in all teams. But the Suns, I think it's a fair consideration. They're actually pretty good when healthy.
So right now the hair color thing might be a troll. But if the Jimmy Butler story gets uglier, and teams that are wearing, one or more aprons balk at the prospects of absorbing that deal, do you think that a young team like Detroit, who got, smoked by Boston, a lot of questions about how good they really are, or Charlotte or some other Eastern Conference younger team should try to swoop in and take advantage of that situation and, I don't know, to turn it into a situation to try out Jimmy and hopefully convince him to stay?
No. Are you insane? No.
I'm just I'm asking the questions. That's all I do.
You cannot bring Jimmy Butler into a situation he doesn't want to be in. He's barely happy in situations he wants to be in. He's still a huge pain in the butt. Like, you cannot add him into that. Look, I think Charles Lee, like, that's a pretty good fit, right? Hornets, like, hey, they're a pretty fun team. No, under no circumstances. You can't add a player that age to a young roster. You can't try and accelerate the timeline with Jimmy Butler at age 35. You can't risk having to pay him the money that he's going to have to pay, that you're going to have to pay him for a team that's not ready to contend for a title. And you can't deal with them in the locker room. Under no circumstances should any team that is not well reinforced with a title contender even look in the direction of the phone to call Pat Riley. No, stay away. No touchy, Doug. No touchy.
I'm just asking questions, Hayes.
No, I agree with Matt on this one. Like, we've seen, like, you have to have a certain mindset to play and mentality to play with Jimmy Butler. Like, we see now Joel Embiid now kind of looks back on that time with Jimmy Butler and probably was like, hey, I wish I would have embraced him more, but he wasn't ready at that time. Adding Jimmy Butler at this age to a young team, it could completely throw off any bit of the chemistry that you build. Like I could see the fittest maybe on the basketball court with like a team like Houston, but I would hate to see him disrupt what that young team's building in a team like Houston. So I don't want to see Jimmy Butler go to a young team. He needs to go to a team that's ready with vets and a structure there. Otherwise, it can all come crashing down like it did in Minnesota and in Philly.
So you've got apron teams that are going to struggle to make a deal work. You've got younger teams that are going to struggle to make it work with a disgruntled superstar. I think the irony of the apron situation that these teams have put themselves in is that it could result in guys just leaving in free agency anyway. So we will keep talking about the trade deadline, of course, but coming up next, we're going to move to on-the-court action where Matt Moore was just talking earlier about the importance of role players on these contenders. We've got one returning and one making a case already for Sixth Man of the Year. That's coming up on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth, and these generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free and daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. And subscribe to stay up to date with local expert analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. So the NBA non-cup regular season resumed last night, and the Celtics picked right back up where they left off, hammering the Pistons 123-99, led by a 27-point, 10-assist night from Payton Pritchard. Here's John Corrales of Locked On Celtics with what makes Pritchard so crucial to Boston's attack.
He's so dangerous from anywhere on the floor that teams have to cover him and teams have to pay attention to him. And because now they're paying attention to him, this is Payton Pritchard. Think about all the other players he's on the floor with, and he's out there drawing attention. People are afraid of him. So you have to go guard him, and you have to guard him out to 30 feet. So Pritchard, after the game, was explaining, he's like, yeah, I love doing it because it makes the read so much easier. If it's just me and this person, I can tell, do I have space to shoot? Then I'm going to shoot. If I have space to drive, I'll drive. And he's a great ball handler, so he can get by. Now, all of a sudden, you've got a man advantage. You've got a quick 5-on-4, maybe a 3-on-2 somewhere, or a 2-on-1. And that's the advantage that Joe Mazzulla is trying to create.
Hayes, how impressed have you been with Payton Pritchard's performance this season? Is he a lock already for Sixth Man of the Year?
Yeah, I do think he's a lock already for Sixth Man of the Year. Unless somebody has a crazy latter half of this season, I think Payton Pritchard has completely separated himself. It was like him and Buddy Hield there for a minute at the start of the season, but Buddy Hield's falling completely off a cliff. Impressed, like Payton Pritchard and what he's able to do off that bench and how he affords that Boston Celtics team such a luxury in what he's able to do offensively and just ease the pressure off those players. And keep in mind, we only gotten a few games of Kristaps Porzingis being back on that team as well. So, like, he really helps that team a lot. I really look at him like he's right up there with Derek White to me, honestly. Like, his run has been almost the same as like when Derek White started having that importance with the Boston Celtics, in my opinion. I see Matt's making a face. Go ahead, Matt. Go ahead, cook.
Well, I mean, it's just like, look, I think he's a lock for Sixth Man of the Year because the history of that award is regular season scorers that take a benefit of the regular season and can't play in the playoffs. So it's a natural fit here for Payton. Payton Pritchard is the number one player in pick and roll scoring this season per possession. That's like number one. He has 40 possessions running pick and roll. They've scored 70 points with just him shooting off of pick and roll. That's unbelievable. You dive into the numbers and they're still +9 with Pritchard on the floor in net rating. They're 10 points worse on defense. That's how good they are on offense. is how good they are with him on the floor. In large part because, and I'm doing a whole big project on this, the way teams defend the Celtics is the dumbest thing imaginable. And we need to talk about it on the show at some point. That just teams guarding them like normal squads is ridiculously dumb. I think that teams have to do more to attack Pritchard. He is the player that he looks like. Like, he is that guy. You can take advantage of him, and no one does. Like, he is who we thought he was, and we let him off the hook every single time. But to the Celtics' unending credit, and Pritchard's own, because Pritchard puts the work in on defense. Like, he does, like, yes, he's not a good defender, but he puts the work in, and that gets you most of the way there. He takes advantage of every opportunity he's given. He knocks down every shot. It's all going great for Boston. How could it possibly go wrong, Doug?
Well, I don't know what's the answer, because if you put pressure on Pritchard, like, don't they kill you with the things that you knew they were going to kill you with? It's like, well, how do you want to be killed? Do you want to be killed by the knife in the chest or the knife in the back? Because Pritchard's the knife in the back, but you know the knife in the chest is coming, which is Tatum and Brown.
Well, I would say that if you make it to where Pritchard's unplayable, which is hard. I'm not saying this is easy. If you make it to where Pritchard's unplayable, those guys have to play more minutes, and those guys get worn out. And then those guys, you might have a shot to be able to outlast them. Not in the regular season. I am looking down the line into the playoffs. But if we're talking like, is Payton Pritchard the sixth man of the year? Yes, with a period and dot. Yep.
No Dean Wade?
More impactful player. Better winning percentage when he plays. Dean Wade.
Perfect segue, because I want to talk about the Cavs. Let's stay on some juicy contender role player talk. Max Strus is set to return. The Strus Goose set to return for the Cavs tonight after spraining his ankle in the preseason. Can he pick up where he left off on a Cavs team that, is in a much different standings position than when he last suited up? Here's Danny Cunningham of Locked On Cavs with more on that.
There's a lot of off-ball movement in the offense that the Cavs have been using this year. And Max Strus is going to fit right into that. He's going to be moving off the ball a ton. He's going to be cutting to the basket a ton. The Cavs were, I believe it was a plus 5.3 points per 100 possession when Max Strus was on the floor. They were a minus 1.5 when he was off the floor. There's a big difference between how good the Cavs were with Max off versus how good they were when he was playing basketball. I think he's going to have better looks from the outside than he's probably ever had in his career. I think all of those things that Max is able to provide, I think that's going to help take this Cavs team on both ends of the floor to the next level.
Matt, what does a healthy Max Strus do for you in terms of confidence level in Cleveland as a contender and your fear level in terms of Dean Wade's future minutes?
I'm not too worried about. I wouldn't say that Strus doesn't move the needle a lot for me because they've gotten really great play from their other wings. Like, setting aside Dean Wade, like Okoro's played really well, and they have a bunch of guys. What I think is interesting here is they're going to be very closely evaluating this because people around the league have suggested that the Cavaliers are still looking for wing help, that they're not done trying to upgrade at that position, which I think is really interesting. There's been reports about it elsewhere too. I think it's really interesting that they are so good, that they have this great record, and yet they're still looking for upgrades. I would just say that I'm sure Strus will play well. He's a good player. Guys out of Miami are kind of inconsistent. He didn't shoot the ball great last year, which is a little bit of a concern. This season, without Max Strus and with Dean Wade, they are 16-1. I rest my case.
I think Max Strus can help strengthen certain areas of what the Cleveland Cavaliers already do. You look at them, they're sixth in the league in above the break threes made. They're seventh in the league in corner threes made. Max Strus can definitely help in both those areas for him. He just needs to come back healthy. Is it going to be seamless, him just stepping into that role? We'll see. To Matt's point, he was 35% three-point shooter last year. While that's not terrible, it's not amazing either. It's not the 41% he shot his second to last year in Miami. So it really comes down to how he acclimates. But I think at the bare minimum, I don't think he hurts the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he can help them. And we've seen games where Max Strus has gotten really hot and helped that team when they needed somebody to make some shots. But the Cavs are just so good. I don't know if it really changes my perspective on them a lot because they just have been so good this season in a lot of different looks and against a lot of different teams. So I think either way, they're just going to be solid. Now, as far as the Matt adding that they're still looking to add, do the rich just keep getting richer in the modern NBA as long as they're not going above the second tax apron? Go ahead.
Yeah,
but is
much.
that the Celtics effect? Like everyone's still trying to solve this puzzle, particularly in the East?
They're still trying to find more wings. I mean, Doug, I'd actually like your thoughts on this of should the Cavs try and keep more options, right? Like Okoro or Strus or Wade or Merrill, or should they try and just get like one upgrade, like maybe like a Dorian Finney-Smith or something? Like, is it better to have more options or one better option?
It's a tough one. I mean, I think depth in the regular season certainly benefits you as a team. But once you get into the playoffs, when things tighten up, rotations shorten, then I think, having, whether it's on the offensive end or the defensive end, having the bigger X factor often can decide a series. Again, when you're facing off against a Death Star, you've got to find some secret weapons. You've got to find a way to put it into the what was it, the trash receptacle or whatever Luke Skywalker hit to kill the Death Star.
We've gone too far on Boston. I'm just going to say that. We've gone too far on Boston in a year. The title has changed too many minds on them. We got to come back at this next week, I think.
Okay, well, coming up in the next segment, we're going to talk about the NBA Cup. The semifinals are on Saturday. We'll preview that and our favorite things of the week. That's all ahead on Locked On NBA. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, and maybe you want to make that $5 bet on the NBA Cup Finals. You can get, I think, Thunder right now, slight favorite over the Bucks. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to join today. You're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On NBA ahead. The NBA Cup semifinals are tomorrow. Bucks and Hawks, Thunder and Rockets. The Thunder are slight favorites over the Bucks to win it all, according to FanDuel. Locked On Bucks isn't looking too far ahead, though, because the Hawks present some major problems that the Bucks haven't been able to deal with. Let's take a listen to that.
The Hawks are the 5th best offensive rebounding team in the league. And, you go back to that first matchup between these two teams. It's not always as easy as just looking at the raw numbers and say, well, the Bucks got X amount of rebounds, the Hawks got this, because of, taking things into account of how many opportunities did you have? How many shots did they miss versus you? But Camille, the Hawks had a near 39% offensive rebounding rate in that first matchup, which, it's not as though that's an outlier for the Bucks. We've seen more and more of that this season.
We have, and that's an area where the Bucks are going to have to tighten up. Because when you look at like the Hawks as a whole, and you're like, well, they're not really that good. Like they have the 16th best offense, the 14th best defense. Like they're middling. So you would look at that and be like, well, what's the threat? It's the fact that they're able to crash the offensive boards at such a high level to generate extra possessions. So for the Bucks, they're going to have to cut out the quote unquote easy Hawks buckets.
Okay, so when you look at these 4 teams, I feel like each of them features some kind of inbuilt advantage. I mean, Houston's perimeter defense, Giannis, the Hawks playing like Heath Ledger's Joker, just all over the place. Which key advantage do you believe will carry one of these teams all the way to a cup title, Matt?
I don't know. I don't like saying this. The Hawks don't make any sense. So I can't make a logical deduction here. They're an illogical team. I've said this the other day. They're 6-1 versus the Knicks, the Cavaliers, the Bucks, and the Celtics. They're 8-11 versus everybody else. If they were playing the Hornets, Doug, I'd like Charlotte. I don't know what to do here. I will say that the offensive rebounding thing probably not that big of a concern. The Bucks give up a fair amount of offensive rebounds, but they are the 5th best team in preventing second chance points. I don't know. I can't really see a way the Hawks are able to get this win here, but I didn't think they were going to beat the Knicks. So they got past them. I don't think that they're dead. They're drawing dead here, Hayes. It's like, how are the Hawks going to win? I don't know. Dyson Daniels is awesome. That's about all I got.
Yeah, they're the biggest irrational confidence team in the league. Like you can't be confident in anything that they're going to do consistently, but they find a way, and that's the thing that makes basketball fun. And in this matchup against the Milwaukee Bucks, I can see the Atlanta Hawks winning this game. Am I going to predict them to win? I mean, maybe, but I don't feel very confident in that. Like I just. It's going to come down to somebody doing something crazy, whether it's Jalen Johnson having an amazing game like he had last game where Trey got all the talk around it, or it is Dyson Daniels playing amazing defense. But I think when you look at it, not only this team's ability to offensive rebound, get up, get more shots, but I also think like the Bucks have struggled at times this season against teams just that refuse to go away. And I think that could be the Atlanta Hawks in this game against the Milwaukee Bucks, that they just refuse to go away. And if those young guys get out and get in rhythm, I can see them causing kind of that defense of the Milwaukee Bucks fits in this game.
So reportedly ticket sales are down in terms of people going to Vegas to watch these games. I'm sure this is not the exact 4 teams that the NBA would want to see in a premier sort of NBA Cup situation that they've set up. But on the other hand, I think there's a lot of fun basketball here to analyze, to be had. And I really feel like the storyline for these 4 teams is like, it's 4 teams playing for a cup, but it's really 4 teams playing for like, I want to be taken seriously in my respective conference. Which of these teams do you think needs a cup win the most? Like which team would benefit most from winning this thing that largely has really only financial benefits? But which team do you think could take this and, sort of vault them for the rest of the year? Hayes.
Rockets. I think that if the Rockets are able to win this NBA Cup, it would give them confidence. Not to say that they lack confidence at all, but like they're a young team that people look at, I myself look at, and I say they're good. They're a good team, but I kind of doubt like how far in this first year in the playoff run they're going to be able to go. But I think if they're able to get an NBA Cup win here, it could give them some confidence and give them a little bit of swagger. It can give them a little bit in their cap to where they just play with that confidence level throughout the rest of the season. That could push them. I'm not going to pick them to come out the West or anything like that, but I do think that if you're looking at a team that can disrupt what the way that it looks like this Western Conference is going to go, the Houston Rockets could be that team, and this NBA Cup could be the first step in that.
I think it's important with the cup not to kind of put it beneath the title. It's not really on the same like playing field. You guys kind of separate them diagonally a little bit, right? Like they got to separate a little bit here in terms of the status of them. And from that perspective, I think it's the Hawks, right? If the Rockets win, it's like, okay, cool, but we want to win the title, and that doesn't show that you can. The Thunder have never won its title. The Rockets have in their franchise history, and it'd be like a cool thing. But for OKC, like they've got bigger eyes. Same thing with the Bucks. But with the Hawks, like that's not a reasonable thing for them to think they can compete for the championship. But if they win the cup, it shows, hey, this young core is really something to believe in. And we've got a plan and a progress now. Like we're on track so that next year you can evolve to being a contender. And so that to me, I think is where I get to the Hawks is the rest of those teams are serious title contenders. They don't need the cup because they have something else to chase this season. This is probably the best the Hawks are going to get. So I think for the Hawks, it's definitely them that they've got to be the one to win the cup.
I like the idea of the NBA Cup being sort of the prove it cup. Like, all right, now our team is fully defined. We're ready to sort of move this thing in a direction and not tear it all down or make major adjustments.
A friend of mine suggested that this is the intercontinental title of the NBA from a wrestling terminology, and I really liked it.
I like that a whole lot.
Which team is Chris Jericho? That's the question. Okay, really quickly, favorite things of the week. We do this every Friday, wrapping up the week here. We'll start with Matt. What was the favorite thing that you saw this week?
Chris Paul taking over number 2 on the all-time assist record. Just the love for him. They did a sit down with him and Tony Parker for Spurs.com. Thought that was really cool. The video of all of his different teammates. Jared Dubin over at his Substack had a really great chart that showed all the different players that Chris has assisted to through the years. And there were some great throwback names on that list. Shout out David West, by the way, Assassin's Creed David West. It was just really cool to see a legend kind of get recognized. Chris is entering that period where he's not going to win a title and his career is winding down. He's not done yet. He says that he thinks he can play 1 to 2 more, but it's just really cool to see those milestones kind of happen. And for a guy that I've watched the entire career of and I've loved every second of, it was cool to see him have that moment.
Hayes.
My best of the week is the whole entire NBA Cup semifinals. Like all those games were excellent. They were really good games. And so just from a perspective of just sitting back and watching good basketball, like that was 2 nights of just watching 4 games over those 2 nights that just were really good from top to bottom. They all had their own storylines. They all had their little wrinkles. They all had a little bit of controversy after it in a different case. So I think that was my favorite thing of the week is just how good these NBA Cup games have really been this year.
I agree. I think whatever calculation they did to figure out how much money was on the line, it worked. Like, I mean, all right. So my favorite thing of the week was actually what happened as a result of those knockout rounds, those games being so good, and the Knicks getting knocked out and having to answer some questions about their play this season. When asked about it, Karl Anthony Towns said the Knicks have, quote, spurts of consistency, which I don't think that's that sounds like concepts of a plan. Like, I don't think that's a spurts of consistency.
We're really consistent for short periods of time, intermingled.
And then we're not in between that. We're not consistent. You know what? I like the idea of Karl Anthony Towns becoming the Yogi Berra of the NBA. The NBA needs that. The NBA needs a quote Smith who can drop those every now. We haven't had one probably since like Shaq. Shaq would drop those in the locker room all the time. These things you would go, wait, what? I don't. What? Okay, that's all right.
Equally great is that he referenced. He compared this Knicks team to the Heat with LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. And like, I get where he's, as always with Cat, it's like, I get where you're coming from. I really do. But man, like, you got to run these guys, these things by your publicist before you say them. It's hard with an interview, but you really got to get somebody to work with them on the answers. Or
let me throw this out there, or don't run them by them for our entertainment, for our benefit.
Coming, Cat.
It just keep those. There's really no harm. All right. If you like what you heard today, if you like what you heard this week, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every single day. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA Game Night. They're recapping every game. It's on this feed. So if you're subscribed to this feed, you already get it. And enjoy tonight's action. Enjoy the NBA Cup semifinals. Be kind to each other. And we're going to see you right back here next week on Locked On NBA.